Hello, 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 lovely ladies. It's Jen here tonight. I'm a self-awareness coach and nutritional consultant who helps highly sensitive women to help build inner, self-awareness, as well as helping to simplify healthy eating and healthy living so that you can feel your absolute best. So this is my weekly episode for the Loving Health Journey, your journey to all things HSP, self-awareness, and holistic health. All right, so today I am going to be talking about why it's beneficial for your health and your well-being to focus more on what you do that helps you to feel good rather than to focus on specific rules. So let me know if this sounds familiar. So you're the type of person who always seeks out the newest fads, the newest diets, because you want to find something that actually works for you and gets you the results that you desire. Or maybe you've tried diet after diet after diet and you haven't had any success. Or you've had success but then it doesn't last. Or maybe you find that you do have this desire to change, but you can't seem to stick to anything long enough to see results. So you end up jumping from quick fix to quick fix, but nothing really sticks. So if this sounds familiar, this is kind of ringing any bells, then this episode is just for you, okay? I've been there myself. I tried thing after thing after thing, and I really, would see minimal results where I'd move forward, move backwards. And, I kept thinking, why can't I get this right? Why can't this stick? Is there something wrong with me? Maybe there's something wrong with my body, All these other people seem to be having all these results and all of this stuff. And what I didn't realize is that there takes a degree of self-awareness that is needed in order to figure all this out. I mean, there are people who have results and they follow things strictly. There's nothing, that they can still have the results, but then there's a concern for other things, and I'll get into that in a second. Anyways, so these things probably aren't working for you because in following all these things to the letter, you probably aren't noticing signals that your body is sending you. And as a result, that's why you're not getting results, because yes, you're following a diet, yes, you're following these things, but it may not be what your body actually needs in that moment. Not to say it isn't beneficial or it isn't healthy or it isn't nutritious, it just might not be what your body needs right now. So, that raises the question is, how do we get so disconnected? How do we get so far away from feeling these feelings that we're supposed to feel? We're supposed to, notice what our body is telling us. We're supposed to be able to feel these things. Why aren't we? And this is not just a you problem. It was something I've dealt with, I still deal with. It's a world problem. So many people, we're disconnected. We're disconnected to how we feel. We're disconnected to our bodies. We're disconnected. We're disconnected from each other. It's a very interesting thing, and I could probably talk about that itself in just, for a full hour, but it is an issue. So one of the things that, I think, can be contributing to this is the fact that when we're growing up, we really aren't, in general, unless you're very fortunate, taught how to react based on how you feel. So there are certain rules of society, there are certain guidelines, there's always the things and fads, and in health especially, there's the fads and the things that people assume are the best, and that can change. Look at how child rearing has gone and changed from the 50s to now. Each decade had its own different way and all its own suggestions and its own, healthy thing to do. And it's changed so much, and a lot of it's bounced back and forth, but some of it is completely new. And so the thing is that if we're constantly following these things, we're not really following ourselves, right? We're following these outside factors. And so when we aren't, one of the basic things that we're not taught is how to connect our food to how we feel. So one of these things is that we're usually, a lot of, not all the time, but one of the things that used to happen is that we are taught to eat, wellness happens now, is we're taught to eat based on a schedule. So this can look like a different amount of things. So back in the 80s, I believe 80s, and this, I just want to clearly say this isn't to blame anybody, this isn't to blame our parents or society, but just to point out that some of the habits we may have been taught may not allow us to, focus on ourselves and have that connection with ourselves. And so we need to it's interesting to look at where it came from just so that we can start moving forward. So for instance, when we're fed as infants, we may have been fed on a strict schedule. So there was a time where doctors suggested that you fed infants every 3 to 4 hours, whether they were hungry or not. And you didn't feed them sooner. So, if a crying infant is hungry and we're making them wait an extra hour or two, and then we're feeding them, or if we're feeding them and they're not hungry and making them eat, we're kind of not listening to their cues. And so when we do that on a long term, it does have effects. So then we're learned to do things on a schedule, to do things from an outside perspective, what other people are telling us, rather than listening to ourselves. And this can be seen in schools and in professions when we are being told to eat snacks and lunches at specific times. It's not necessarily when we're hungry, it's just when we have to eat because that's the space that's been given to us. So, rather than waiting for a hunger cue, we eat because it's time, or what we're supposed to eat because that's what's been given to us. And the one thing to keep in mind is that one of the things that initiates digestion is hunger. That growling, when we smell food, that's what gets our digestive juices going. And so without that, when we're just eating, we may not digest things as well because it doesn't have a time to fully rev up. The other thing is that through learned behavior, we pick up habits such as eating for comfort or to numb our discomfort. So rather than being taught to listen to our body, listen to our feelings, notice what we're feeling, we are often taught to ignore them, that they're not healthy, that they're bad. And so we are more so taught to push them down through the use of food, drugs, alcohol, or distractions like TV or just things that are distracting us from life. And so being disconnected, we're never really noticing how we're feeling. We're not noticing how one thing that we're doing is affecting another in our body. We just don't have that awareness. And that's no one's fault. It's just a thing that has evolved over time and just where we're at in society. But, the more that people like me, bring this out, and, it's something that I have found has made a huge impact in my own health. And so I know that it's important, and I know that it's something that can help lots of people. So how it can help is that when you start to build this self-awareness and you start focusing on what helps you feel good, you don't have the need to focus on plans or diets or anything like that. It's not restrictive. So it's very common in the health industry for people to seek out meal plans, coaching plans, and while these are and can be completely necessary and helpful throughout our journey in different aspects, because we need to learn, we need to know where to start, the goal long term is for you to notice and feel what's right for you. And so that can even mean, so even when you have this awareness, it can mean helping you to figure out who to work with, because you have that awareness of, well, that I think is what I need to know. So it can be helpful in that as well. And eventually it can help you get away from strict diets and meal plans and all of that stuff. Like, that stuff can be your starting point, but once you start making these connections, you can be like, well, today I think I need this and this and this. And by connecting to your body and learning to follow its cues, you won't need to follow a meal plan again, potentially. Now, I will say that this is not something that can be learned overnight, because obviously we've had years of conditioning the other way, but it is certainly worth the time and effort. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is when we get so obsessed with plans and listening to outside sources, we can become very, very obsessed on details that may not actually be important. And that can eventually become harmful if we're doing things in a not so good way. This is, we can see that in eating disorders. And there's a new thing that's kind of popped up probably in the last 10 years because of the health industry. And this is something that's called orthorexia. And it's a disorder that where people focus on eating and living healthy, and they obsess around being healthy so much that they have a fear of eating out or eating non-organic, and that just in eating one meal or eating one thing that's not organic or whatever, that it's going to cause disease. And so it becomes this obsession where they, can't eat out in public, they can't eat out with others, they can't do all of these things because they're so obsessed with the need to be healthy. And so I think, our goal is to move towards health and wellness and feeling good. But the one thing I don't like about focusing on healthy is that we can become so obsessed with it. And so one of the things I've been trying to do in the things that I talk about and when I talk about things is that I try to focus on how does it feel. So when you're eating stuff and you're doing these things, how does that make you feel? Do you feel digestively good, not good? Do you get gas, bloating? How's your sleep? How's your mood? How's your energy? These are things that we may not think to look at, but they're important, and they are kind of your signals that your body is sending you to let you know what's going on. So it is something that can be very helpful in that aspect. I just need a small water break. Ooh, okay. So the other point is that we're all a bit different. We're all slightly biochemically different, genetically different genes. And so one thing that might work for one person may not work exactly the same for another person. So there are people out there who have a really hard time with certain ways of eating and certain stuff. And it's just where they are in their journey, potentially, but also their body. So this is why some meal plans and diets that may help us initially to help us start on our journey may not be beneficial for us long term, because our needs can change day to day. They can change hour to hour. Some days I feel the need for just fruit, just a lot more fruit, and I might not have much else. Sometimes it's more raw, sometimes it's more cooked. Sometimes it's a lot of what you call mono meals, which is just eating one single thing. And I've learned over time to kind of listen and feel what's good for me, because what may work for another person may not work for me where I am right now. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. And, this point, which I think is really important, it helps you to establish kind of what's real and true for you. We all know that there is so much confusing and overwhelming information out there when it comes to health. You can type anything into Google and you'll get 100 results. Now, how do you determine what's good, what's not? I mean, there is a certain education and, intuition that can come with that, with time, when you learn more and more. But for me, a lot of it is more intuition than it is. I have the educational background. I have that knowledge, but a lot of it for me is intuition at this point. And I kind of feel what will work for me. Because, I did spend a lot of time following these different things, and I'm not saying that this one's not true or this one isn't, because it may be true for someone else. But it just wasn't real or true for me. And so when we can start to bring that self-awareness in and, take the learnings from this leader or educator, try it out, try pieces of it out, kind of take what feels right for us and leave the rest. And, another one I see so often in, the health industry, and even it can be in the same niche. So if we're talking plant-based or vegan, there are different takes on that, and different doctors that say this is how you should do it, or this is how you should do it, or this is how you should do it. And I wouldn't necessarily say that this one's wrong, or this one's wrong, or this one's wrong. There may be parts that I don't agree with, but as a whole, you know, they each have good points. And so it's about learning to know what to take away for yourself, and what else to just kind of leave. And really, what anyone's doing is going by experience. Even if you go by studies and everything, right? They're going by experience in what they're seeing, but they're not necessarily seeing the whole picture or everybody. They can do, you know, whatever they think is the least bias, but they're still not getting the whole picture, right? So that's the interesting thing, is that everyone's just going by their experience, and it's not necessarily wrong because it's their experience. But it doesn't mean that if your experience is different than theirs, that yours is wrong either. Different things can help different people, and that's one thing I think is very important. So yeah, that is basically why I think it is very important to focus on how you're feeling from within. You know, what is your body telling you? Focusing on feeling good in your skin, feeling good in your body, rather than following strict rules or focusing on this healthy stuff. So what do you think about that? You know, any questions, any thoughts about what I've said? I would love to hear them. And, you know, after listening to this, if you know of anybody that you think would benefit from this, feel free to share it with them. I think that would definitely be great. And lastly, if, you know, you're going through all of this and you're like, okay, you know, I'm, you know, ready to bring more self-awareness in, or, you know, I've tried but don't kind of know where to start, that's definitely something I can help you with. You can book a nutritional call with me, a free 30-minute call, and we can kind of discuss where you're at, where you're going, you know, figure out what obstacles are kind of keeping you in your way, and figure out a plan for you, kind of step by step, on how you can start bringing this more into your life, with your diet and other things. I'm so glad you enjoyed it, Michelle. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very important topic, and I think it's something that comes up quite a bit. It's definitely important. So to book that call, I will have a link up above the video, and yeah, so that will be available for you. Like I said, if you have any questions, any comments about this, be sure to leave me a comment or a message, and I will definitely get back to you. But otherwise, it is time for me to head out. Thank you for, you know, being here, Michelle. Good night.